Hey, what's going on, guys? It's Ben here, and today I'm going to be doing a video talking about the proposed Jimmy Butler to the Rockets trade. If you haven't heard about this, I'll give you a little bit of background before I get into it. Basically, the Rockets renewed trade talks with the Timberwolves, and they have offered Marquise Chris, who's a power forward and recently acquired, along with 4 future first-round draft picks that are theirs, to the Timberwolves in exchange for Jimmy Butler. And the draft picks can't be every single year because of a rule in the rule book for trades and all that. So the picks would be the 2019 Rockets first-round pick in the next upcoming draft, the 2021 pick, the 2023 pick, and the 2025 pick. And then Jimmy Butler would go to the Rockets. That's all that the Timberwolves would be giving up. So that's a bit of background. That story broke last Friday and has been a topic of discussion recently. And I'd like to give my perspective on it. So now I'm going to start off saying how I feel and whether I think that the Timberwolves should take the trade. And then I'll explain to you a little bit of why I think that. So really what I think that the Timberwolves should do is not take this exact trade, but basically just ask the Rockets to slightly tweak it. I think what the Timberwolves need is to ask for, instead of Marquise Chris, to get Eric Gordon in return. If they can change the deal to that, getting 4 future first-round picks along with Eric Gordon, I would take that trade in a heartbeat for the Timberwolves. Marquise Chris isn't really going to do anything for them. They don't need another power forward. They already have in the post Karl Towns, Taj Gibson, Gorgui Dieng, and then younger guys like Justin Patton and an older veteran in Anthony Tolliver. They don't need another guy to play the 4 or the 5, depending on what lineup you want to try out. They really need some wing depth because they honestly don't have if they trade Jimmy Butler and they don't get a shooting guard in return, they don't have a shooting guard on the roster. They have, in the backcourt, basically Derrick Rose would have to be playing full-time shooting guard and no point guard whatsoever. Or they'd have to start Josh Okogie, who's really, to me, a guy who's best served as like a reserve, or a guy who's maybe getting 10 minutes a night, but not a guy who's starting and getting 25 to 30 minutes a night. I think that's a bit too much. But if they could get Eric Gordon in return, they could do something where they either start him or bring him off the bench, but play him like 30 minutes a night or something like that. But without Marquise Chris, I don't think that they should do it. But now, to explain a little bit more why I think that the Timberwolves should take this trade, some people would argue that they shouldn't and they should hold out for something better. I don't really think that they're going to get anything better, and I think that although first-round picks aren't as valuable in the NBA, and the first thing that comes to everybody's mind is like, oh, those Rockets picks won't be valuable whatsoever because they will be late first-round picks because the Rockets are going to be good, and the picks are going to be pretty late in the first round. But I agree with that a little bit, but I don't agree with it completely. And what I mean by that is this: like, yes, in this next year, the 2019 draft pick that the Wolves will be getting, that will probably be somewhere in the 20s. The Rockets are only 1-4 right now, so maybe it will actually be a pretty high pick. Who knows? But I mean, I think most of us expect them to be somewhere in the 50s or 60s for wins. So that being said, the draft pick will likely be somewhere in the 20s and not that valuable in this upcoming draft. But you look ahead to 2021. By that time, Chris Paul will be 35, James Harden 30, Jimmy Butler 31. They'll probably still be a really good team, but maybe more like a 3 or a 4 seed in the West. Like with Chris Paul's age, continuing to increase rapidly, you don't know how well he's going to age. But I would still expect the pick to be around like 20 in the draft, which again isn't great, but we don't really know how these guys are going to age, so it's hard to predict. But I'm just guessing that from the injury problems that Chris Paul has had over the years, that his they will persist and, if anything, get worse with age, as injuries do. And he will continue. I think he's hit his peak, definitely. I think he's definitely on the decline now, or at least has plateaued and is going to hit the decline soon. But so yeah, I'd predict probably around like number 20 for the next for the 2021 pick. By 2023, Chris Paul will be 37. I'd predict by this point he'll be retired. James Harden will be 32, and Jimmy Butler will be 33. And this pick, I could see it being a lottery pick. I don't know if Jimmy. Even we also have to consider. I'll do this later, but if Jimmy Butler doesn't re-sign with them to the max contract and he leaves, that could be a whole nother story. But I'll just keep going with this for right now. Yeah, assuming Jimmy Butler stays with them. So Harden will be 32 in 2023, and Jimmy Butler will be 33. Jimmy Butler's already started to show some not terrible, not overwhelming, but just some signs that he's aging a bit, in that he's already had injury problems in back-to-back seasons, missing a decent amount of games in each season. And I don't think that we're going to see that go down, as in, what I mean to say by that is I think his injury problems will continue, because like guys that are injury prone usually don't have success getting over it and maintaining at their same level. Now, freak injuries are different, as in Gordon Hayward or Paul George missing one season and coming back and hopefully being themselves again. But Jimmy Butler's had some repeated injury problems, and guys that have repeated injury problems usually don't get over those while also being able to maintain their same level of play. An example would be like Dwayne Wade, who around 2013 started to experience more severe injury problems in his career, and although he got over them, and right around probably from like 2016 to now, he's been like relatively injury free. He also has seen his play level decline quite a bit. What I'm referring to is that it's hard to maintain the high level of play a guy has while also getting injured less frequently. Like Chris Paul, like around 2015-16, he started like having regular absences from the season with injuries. Like I think in every season, 2017 playoffs, 2018 playoffs, 2016 playoffs, all three of those seasons he missed time during the playoffs with injury struggles, and during the regular season of all those too. So with a guy like that, and what I'm starting to see with Jimmy Butler, I don't know if he'll necessarily ever play another 81 game season. You know, he might be a guy who plays only 65 to 70 games in a given season. But either way, I see, getting back on track, I see this pick being like, it's really hard to speculate how the Rockets are going to retool, but I would guess somewhere between like 15 to 20. Like I'll expect them to be like maybe a 5 or a 6 seed in the West, if their main core is a 33-year-old Jimmy Butler and a 32-year-old James Harden. And then finally, looking at that 2023 pick, you're going to be seeing a 34-year-old Harden and a 35-year-old Butler. I expect Butler to have declined by this point and basically not be a shell of himself, but basically be not as good as he used to be, and maybe a guy who gives you 12 5-5 instead of 20 5-5. And as for James Harden, you know, a lot of his game relies on shooting, which usually holds up over age, but and he's never been a super athletic guy either, so he'll probably still maintain a decent level of play, but he will be past his prime by this point and a worse player. And actually, you know, I could see this pick being anywhere in the top 10 or even a high lottery pick, you know. Let's say that Jimmy Butler by this point has established that he's going to be a pretty injury-prone player in his career, and James Harden is on a team with like no other legit talent, which could potentially happen. We don't know how the Rockets will retool. Clint Capella may have already hit his ceiling and may just be a guy that gives you 12 and 10 on 60% shooting and 2 blocks a game. That could be his ceiling. We don't know. But really, if you look at this Rockets team and how it's built, this is a team building for like this season and next season, and they're really putting all their eggs into this season and next season. And like you look at their team, PJ Tucker's I think like 32 or 33, Nene's like 33, Eric Gordon's 29 going on 30. Gerald Green I think is like 31, 32. They got a little bit younger with like Brandon Knight and Michael Carter-Williams and Marquise Chris, but those guys aren't going to see big minutes at all. But the guys seeing big minutes are the guys that I listed already, and then the guys like James Harden, who's 29. Jimmy Butler, if he came in, would be 29 going on 30. And then let's see here, Chris Paul, who is 33 right now. And by the time this deal would be done, I would predict would be retired for a few seasons from the NBA. That being said, I think that this would be a good deal for the Wolves. You never know. Even if all the picks are in the 20s, teams that are really bad and struggling, like the low down teams in the NBA, like let's say for instance the Hawks or the Knicks right now, or not really the Nets, they're rebuilding and doing a good job, but like the Kings, teams like that, those are teams that they don't just dismiss picks in the 20s. They are usually more willing to trade for them and find building pieces and take flyers on guys in the late parts of the lottery, as opposed to finding guys through like free agency. Just because of the situation they're in, they know that they can't attract big free agents as well, so they're more likely to keep guys who are drafted in the 20s. And so those can become, even if they don't amount to great starting players or anything, they can become good trade chips where maybe you're going to make a big trade with another team and you just need something to incentivize them a little bit more, and that 2021 pick from the Rockets that you didn't think would be ever valuable, that's what puts the trade over the top. I think that it would be a good deal for the Timberwolves, and I honestly do think the 2023 pick could be like top 10. Like we don't really know how the Rockets are going to be. Like James Harden could be gone from the Rockets by 2023. Jimmy Butler could be a shell of his former self. Chris Paul, I think, would be retired. It could be like a top 3 pick. And the main example I'm going to bring up here as to why the Wolves should take this deal if it's tweaked a little bit to get like an Eric Gordon instead of a Marquise Chris. The reason they should take it is because when the Boston Celtics trade happened with the New Jersey Nets, Brooklyn Nets in 2013, where Garnett and Pierce and Jason Terry were sent to the Nets in exchange for, I think it was 3 future first-round picks, along with, let's see here, it was 3 future first-round picks, along with, I think, Gerald Wallace and Chris Humphries, and maybe Marshawn Brooks. Everyone said, man, the Celtics totally got robbed in that deal. They gave up 3 starting caliber players for draft picks that are going to be in the high 20s and like scrubs for players basically. And so that's pretty comparable to what the Wolves would be doing. They'd be giving up like a legit star in exchange for not a scrub, because Marquise Chris is so young, I'm not willing to call him a scrub yet because he's only in his 2nd or 3rd season. I think 3rd. But just a non-starter caliber player, and then a bunch of draft picks that will probably be in the high 20s. But then look at what happened to the Celtics team. Much like the current Rockets, who are built for right now, those New Jersey Nets were building for, or Brooklyn Nets were building for right now in 2013. Their starting lineup had Deron Williams, who I think was 29, up around 29. Joe Johnson, who was around 32 or 31. Paul Pierce, who was around 35. Garnett, who was 36 or 37. And then Brook Lopez, who was like 28, 29. So the youngest guy in the lineup was Brook Lopez, who was basically at about his prime or slightly past his prime. And I think what you saw with that is that obviously the Celtics won that trade because Pierce, Garnett, and Jason Terry really didn't give them that much. Like some help, but not a ton. And then on the other hand, the Celtics got players such as Jaylen Brown, and they also got Jason Tatum. And through trading that first-round pick and Isaiah Thomas, the last first-round pick and Isaiah Thomas that they got in the trade, they got Kyrie Irving. So I think that that trade definitely worked out for them, and I'm not saying that if the Timberwolves did this trade that they'd end up with the likes of getting a Jaylen Brown, Jason Tatum, and Kyrie Irving caliber player. But I don't think people should so quickly dismiss the possibilities that this trade brings up and how it could positively impact the Timberwolves in the future. From the Rockets' perspective, I think that they would be getting more in Jimmy Butler than the Nets got in Pierce and Garnett and Terry. But I also think that there's a lot of risks associated with acquiring Butler as well. He could leave in free agency. He could become more injury prone than he already is. He's 29 years old, so basically you're seeing the best version you're ever going to see of him right now, and it's downhill from here. So yeah, those are my thoughts on the trade proposal from the Rockets to the Timberwolves. I would say if you tweak Marquise Chris to be Eric Gordon, definitely take it. And even if it's still not Gordon and they only offer Chris, still strongly consider it. And ultimately, yeah, it's a good trade offer. It's nothing to snuff at. 4 first-round picks is a lot of assets to be able to trade and use. I don't think that the Timberwolves will take the trade because we haven't heard of it yet. And also, Thibodeau wants to win in this season, and draft picks don't do that for you. But I think it would be good for them. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. Let me know below if you have any comments or thoughts and want to share them with me. And I hope you guys have a good night. Bye.